Cowboys need an overhaul or just a tinker. I already see it looks like it's going to go to the complete overhaul category.
What categorizes an overhaul? And what, because this was kind of where, do you think the whole thing needs it? Do you think that just one section, offense, defense, what needs the overhaul? Or is it just, you know what, we need to add a couple players here, maybe a positional coach here or there? So there are lots of different levels to go with this.
Yeah, I think personally, if you told me you wanted to go scorched earth and you've decided Dak isn't the guy in some way, somehow you're going to burn it all to the ground and rebuild and take your lumps for a couple of years, I'm certainly willing to listen to that strategy, but the Joneses have let us know that is not their preferred strategy, and you did just come off of back-to-back 12-5 seasons. I'm inclined to say tinker.
I'm with you, and I think a lot of Tolos would be like, whoa, Mike, I thought you'd say overhaul. And here's the deal. The Cowboys are a winning franchise right now,
yes.
And I think that they have a good chance to win 10 or more games next year. That being said, I need them to bring back quite a few guys that they have. But if there's any type of overhaul, and this might sound a little bit weird, I think they might need to overhaul the running back situation.
Yes.
I'm not sure about Tony Pollard and how he's going to come back. Zeke is done. Zeke's a 5 to 10 carry guy a game. Like he proved in the second half, you give him the ball as the main guy and you're going nowhere. Yeah. It's Eddie George when he came to the Dallas Cowboys. He's better than that. But that's about where we're at, the way Eddie George was a Dallas Cowboy.
You're right. We brought it up yesterday. He was 10th in the league in most carries, 22nd in most yards, and 42nd in yards per carry. Ugh. Like, that's not the progression that you want.
This is just a tinker. I don't know the Doug Nussmeier. I don't know him at all. He might be a great guy. He might be a pretty good coach. But my tinker is I have to figure out how to get Dak to stop throwing the ball to the other team. And maybe my tinker is you're back to a rookie quarterback. I love you, Dak. I think you're going to be really good. Like, I'm being a Cowboys coach here. But we're going to take a little bit of the responsibility out of your hands. We're going to turn you into, the way to not turn the ball over is to give you the most conservative passes and plays I can possibly give you. I don't want contested balls from you. And the other thing, too, is I know a lot of people are like, it's the wide receivers. This is my opinion. I don't think if you go out and get another good wide receiver, it's going to improve Dak that much. Oh. He had Amari Cooper. He had CeeDee Lamb. Yeah. He had those guys in last year's playoffs, and he put up 7 points until Jimmy Garoppolo self-destructed to give him a chance to come back. I think he would be better with another wide receiver. That Michael Gallup, if Michael Gallup went back to the third wide receiver and you found somebody to be a true number 2 receiver, yes, would Dak be a little bit better? But I don't think that solves your issues because Dak isn't a great passing quarterback.
Can I ask you a question about one of those players in particular? Do you think Michael Gallup will naturally or hopefully be better next year, more than a full year removed from the injury?
I hope so, but I can't remember who said this on The Fan, but somebody, when I was Toloing yesterday, is that it might have been Bobby Belt, that you are 20 weeks into this season. Yeah. How did that never get better? Yeah. So I think that's the concern. Is this who Michael Gallup is? Okay. There are numbers to suggest before he got hurt that he struggles at times to maybe create separation. He struggles at times to catch contested balls. So maybe Michael Gallup, unfortunately, you paid him as a number 2, but he truly is in the NFL somewhere between the 65th and 100th best receiver, which isn't bad. That makes you a third wide receiver, which makes you a starter in the NFL. Yeah. So, but you got to find somebody who you believe is somewhere between the 30th and 60th best receiver in the game. And we know it won't be through free agency. It has to be, you get lucky in the draft. And I say lucky, but Jalen Tolbert's probably not the answer. So you're going to have to redraft that position and figure out, can we draft, I don't know. CeeDee Lamb was a first-round pick. In the first or second or third round, can you get a guy that becomes better than Michael Gallup pretty quickly?
The amazing thing about CeeDee Lamb this year is that he showed he can continue to be anywhere on the field lined up and be the mismatch. Like he did grow into that role. So, Mike, for me, I do want somebody that I can line up at one spot and they're going to win. And I don't know that Michael Gallup did that. T.Y. Hilton didn't do that. Noah Brown didn't do that. I know they don't line up all over the place, but I kind of want that one guy that I'm like, all right, I know I got CD in a mismatch right now, but if they switch and roll double coverage on him, I got somebody opposite him that's going to do that. So maybe not receiver. I need a playmaker. And Tony Pollard was that. Tony Pollard was your playmaker. Take Tony Pollard off the field, Cowboys aren't as good as they typically are. And that just showed throughout this season. I don't know that it's him specifically, but you need, and maybe tight end is a different playmaker spot, but I feel like looking at tight end right now, they're pretty comfortable with what they have going with Hendershot and all the other options there. So I do need somebody opposite CeeDee Lamb, whether it's a running back that can be the guy or whether it's another receiver that is a playmaker. That's why Odell was so appealing at the time, is because when I watch him play, he can be anywhere on the field also. And you line those two up on the same side, now you've created a monster mismatch. Put them on opposite sides, you got mismatches. So I agree with Mike. You do need to find another option for him other than CeeDee Lamb, but I just don't know where that is right now. And so, Kevin, for me, do you want to ask a question about that specifically?
I do. Before we go to anything
go
else,
ahead, man.
Is in your mind, you get to negotiate or not negotiate with Tony Pollard. Like, what would be your strategy? Is you're like, well, what do you want? I mean, or are you just like, nah, I'm not in the game of paying running backs on the second contract?
Yeah, I'm probably at that point where I got to find a place to skimp. Is that the right word?
Sure.
I got to find a place to be Kevin
Yes.
and frugal. And so I love Tony Pollard. My problem is sitting and waiting half of a season for maybe him to be completely healed from the fracture. I don't know how long it's going to take or if he's even the same player. I would rather find a guy maybe in the draft that I can say I can utilize that piece.
Maybe the hope is, I don't know, but after 6 months would be the end of June, right? January, February, March, April, May, June. That on July 1st, you would have a complete and totally healthy Tony Pollard. But that is a little bit scary. Look, it didn't matter with Dak Prescott. It didn't matter with Michael Gallup. It didn't matter with Tank Lawrence.
It's a Blue Star special.
Being hurt does not give you a discount at all with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
They're going to ask for probably 5 for 75.
There's no
The
chance
Cowboys
in
are probably
hell.
going to go 3 for 30, and then they're going to be really close to 5 for 75, is my guess. That's the way it always goes with the Cowboys.
That is the biggest flaw with the Cowboys, by the way.
Yeah.
Just in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know not everyone's with me on
I just wonder
that.
if it's daddy fighting with son on that. Is like, that's the reason it always ends up being bad, is that Steven and Jerry have different philosophies on the situation, and I don't know. I honestly have no clue how it works out, that how the player always ultimately gets exactly what he was asking for in the end from the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't want to overhaul. This team is close to good enough. The hope is, which this is the scary part, is that Dak becomes better because he can solve some of your issues. And that's the thing as a Cowboy fan is, to me, the major hope is he's the guy that can take you to another level, because I don't know who else can.
Okay, so then would maybe my potential overhaul be something that could accommodate you? That is your offensive coordinator, your offensive coaching approach. We're still stuck in some of the Jason Garrett mode with Kellen Moore.
I can see that.
That's not a fake like take on this. Some of his go-to plays are things that came from the Jason Garrett era. And look at their third down plays are like run to the sticks and turn around. We have seen that for years.
Yeah.
Hey, 4 guys run to the sticks and turn around.
Right.
Nobody knew that was coming. God, we got him with that one. So like I understand some of the route concepts are just poor. That's where I don't love it. And that's when I say some of the nuances of getting guys open, some of the nuances of even playing the quarterback position. I still think Kellen Moore has a lot to learn. And we moved on from the Jason Garrett era. So why did we keep one of the Jason Garrett guys? Because we thought he could grow into something. Well, this 2 years in a row now, and your offense didn't produce in the playoffs. So I'm going to say, and maybe they were holding on to him for potential head coaching future because they love to find the diamond in the rough, and he's cheap.
Exactly what I think.
Like, so those could be some definite options there. But Mike McCarthy is a good offensive mind, and he let Kellen Moore for the most part run the offense.
Yeah.
he should know other guys that he like with offenses that he likes and wants to run. If I'm going to overhaul something, I'm going to overhaul it there. Running back and whoever my second receiver is going to be.
I do hope I'm wrong on Kellen Moore because I think he's a pretty good to good offensive coordinator. I don't think he's in the category of Shanahan or I'm drawing a blank, the Rams head coach, Sean McVay.
Yeah.
Like I think there's guys that are better. But I do think he's pretty good. But I hope I'm wrong because this is the only, if you keep him, we know what Dak is.
Yeah.
Dak under Kellen Moore is not going to change. He's going to throw some interceptions. He's going to struggle at times where you're like, God, are you even a top 15 quarterback? That's where we went to the CBS power rankings, and he would fluctuate so much. At times, he'd be the 6th best quarterback, and then 2 weeks later, he'd be the 14th best quarterback because they would struggle with how he would play consistently to be like, who is this guy?
Washington, Tampa Bay, San Francisco. Washington looks like the worst. Yeah. San Francisco looks pretty damn bad. Tampa Bay looks like the best damn quarterback in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It is wild.
And so this is where I hope I'm wrong. If you bring in another offensive coordinator, because I hate doing this, but if you bring in another offensive coordinator, you'll find out about Dak more. I don't think the Joneses will care to ever release him or move on from him, but you'll either find out Kellen Moore was getting the most out of Dak. This is who he is, and he can be no better. It doesn't matter if you bring in Shanahan or if you bring in McVay, which they're not available, but if you were to bring them in and Dak once again struggles with turnovers, struggles with reading defenses, makes the wrong decisions at the wrong time. And he does make some great decisions at great times. And that's why it's so confusing because at times you're like, is he a top 5 quarterback? And then at times you're like, I don't even know if he's a top 15 quarterback. And that's what's confusing about him. But maybe that new offensive coordinator could get more out of him than what Kellen Moore got so far. But if he doesn't, then we know it wasn't Kellen Moore's fault. It's actually Dak's limitations that we cannot overcome.
So, and Kevin, you agreed with me on their idea of not moving on from Moore because they wanted to keep him just in case.
Yeah, that is exact. You said it spot on.
Then are you with me on I'm willing to let him go be something somewhere else and find out about my quarterback before I have to make a decision there? Or do you say keep it together with those two and just deal with it?
My worry is this is one aspect of the Cowboys that is similar to what we talked about with Mark Cuban. I honestly, I do not believe that Mark Cuban is disingenuous when he says we have 3 of the most underrated players in the league. I think he really thinks that. And that...
Which is sad.
Yes. And that's the same thing with the Cowboys because you hear it from so many different places. Oh, Kellen Moore has had the number 1 offense. Dak has had the number 1 offense. And I just wish we would dive a little bit further into those numbers and be like, okay, but did you analyze all of the points? Or are you saying number 1 offense because we score the most points, completely taking out the defensive points that have been scored the last 2 years and then taking out all the defensive turnovers for us because you were the first team in 50 years to lead the league in turnovers in back-to-back years. I do not think that gets appropriately factored into the Cowboys' offensive production.
I love what you're saying because nobody watching professional football this year thought the Cowboys had the best offense in the NFL. There's no way you watch that team and go, that's the team that's most dangerous offensively in the NFL.
But the numbers, Mike.
Right. And you know what else with the numbers? And Jeff Van Gundy did this 3 years ago. When remember the Mavericks were the best offense in the history of basketball. And Van Gundy's doing, I think, one of the Clippers playoff games. And he goes, hey, I know it says this. And I get, hey, the numbers are the numbers. Does anybody think we're watching one of the best offensive teams we've ever seen in basketball? Or even, do we even think this is the best offensive team in 2020 in the NBA? And Mark Jackson was there, and the answer from any human being who watched the Mavericks play is no, they're not the best offense of all time. They're not even the best offense in the NBA right now. But efficiency numbers and certain things will say so. And so this is where sometimes we look at, well, look what they did. But nobody really watching the game can tell you, man, you know what? I've watched the Bengals play, and I've watched the Chiefs play, and I've watched at times Philadelphia play, and go, that Cowboys team, nobody can, they're the best offense I've seen. Nobody thinks that. It's just, there's a number that says they are, but they're not. They're a good offense. Don't get me wrong. It's not an average offense or a bad offense. It's good, but nobody watched the Cowboys this year unless you're like related to the players that said that's the best offense in the NFL.